Hello students, welcome back to our discussion on the emergence of life on Earth. So far, we've discussed the extreme conditions on early Earth and the possibility that inorganic molecules gave rise to the organic molecules that make up living things. Today, we are going to discuss how these organic molecules came together to make the first living cells. So, to begin, let's point out that the exact mechanism by which the first organic molecules came together to form a cell is unknown. The leap in complexity from organic molecule to full cell is so drastic that scientists have not yet been able to propose steps to explain how it might have occurred. With that said, scientists do suggest that the first cell must have been very simple. It would have been composed of a cell membrane, like you see here, as well as a bit of RNA to serve as the hereditary material. The cell membrane would have created a distinct internal environment, separated off from the activity of the external or outside environment. And that's it. That's the entire cell. Very simple, even compared to modern bacteria. Although it is thought that many simple cells of this type had probably formed, scientists suggest that only one early cell gave rise to all the other subsequent life on Earth. This very first cell, which is the ancestor to all the rest of life, is called the LUCA, or the last universal common ancestor. It is unbelievable to think about, but as we go through the course this year, we will see that evidence points to the common heritage of every living thing on the planet. So, what kind of cell was the last universal common ancestor? The LUCA is considered an early prokaryote. A prokaryote is a single-celled organism that has neither a distinct nucleus or other specialized organelles. An example of a modern prokaryote is shown here in this picture of a bacterium. You can see in this picture that there's a little bit of hereditary material, DNA, clumped on the inside, but that DNA is not contained within a distinct membrane-bound nucleus. Instead, it just kind of floats there in a clump. As well, if you investigate the contents of this bacterial cell, you'll notice that aside from some ribosomes, there really are no other organelles. Although this prokaryotic cell is clearly more complex than the first cell shown above, it's still relatively simple compared to the next type of cell that we'll talk about, which are the eukaryotes. Today, these prokaryotes, of course, do still exist. Our modern examples are bacteria and archaea. And of course, we can still find these throughout the world today, and we will study them in detail in our next unit. All right, so as you know from our geologic time activity, billions of years passed before more complex multicellular life could show up on Earth. Before whole complex organisms could evolve, new complex cells had to evolve from simple prokaryotic cells. These new complex cells are called eukaryotic cells. In contrast to prokaryotes, eukaryotes are organisms whose cells contain a distinct membrane-bound nucleus, as well as other specialized organelles enclosed within membranes. Since you've likely learned about cellular organelles in the past, you probably know that the organelles found inside eukaryotic cells enable the cell to carry out more sophisticated functions. Two eukaryotic cells, a plant cell and an animal cell, are shown here. Notice the many distinct membrane-bound organelles inside each of these cells. Because the organelles of eukaryotic cells can carry out complex functions, these are the kind of cell that multicellular organisms are made of. So, how did simple prokaryotic cells with no organelles evolve into eukaryotic cells with many complex organelles? Scientists use the endosymbiotic theory to explain how simple prokaryotic cells could have become more complex. This theory suggests that eukaryotes evolved through a process whereby large prokaryotes, like this one shown in blue, engulfed smaller prokaryotes, like these two, this red one and this green one. The trick is, when the large prokaryote engulfed the smaller ones, like you see here, you can see the blue eukaryotic cell is engulfing the smaller red prokaryotic cell. When the larger cell engulfed the smaller cells stayed intact instead of being digested by the larger cell. Thus, the term endosymbiosis, with the term symbiosis here, meaning living together, which you guys learned in our last section, so this word should be familiar to you as meaning living, a close association of living together. And then hopefully that term endo you recognize from your earlier science classes as well. For instance, endoskeleton means a skeleton that is on the inside. So, endo means inside. Oh, Lord. Sorry about the color change. All right, and sorry about the sloppy writing. So this term literally defined itself. It means that it's a type of symbiotic relationship where one organism lives inside the other. I think I have this already written down for you on your slides, but you may want to underline some important part. We've got large prokaryotes engulfing, but not digesting small ones. So, in this theory, the suggestion is that these smaller prokaryotes would evolve to become the organelles, such as the chloroplasts and mitochondria that we're familiar with today. So, why would this have happened? The idea is that small prokaryotes would have benefited from the protection and the nutrients afforded by the larger prokaryotes. And then the larger prokaryote would have derived energy from the actions of the smaller prokaryotes living inside of it. And thus, and I'm sorry I forgot to animate this one, but this type of relationship is specifically a symbiotic relationship called mutualism, where both organisms benefit from living together. Okay, that's it for tonight. Tomorrow we'll spend some time practicing with these concepts. See you then.